One of the pieces of feedback that I gave some of the kids at the entrepreneur program at JMU, I said, it's hard, but you have to fill in your blind spots. And you read about this in here, but this is not something new, right? But you have to find people that you're like puzzle pieces that come together for the full picture. And that was something that took me a while to figure out. And the people side of what any business is the most difficult part about the business.
The Digital Banking Podcast is powered by Typhone. Typhone is the creator of Infinia, a dramatically better digital banking platform for community financial institutions, as well as several platform-agnostic revenue-generating point solutions. Our highly configurable platform and broad ecosystem of third-party partners ensure our entire suite is scalable and extensible to meet the needs of any FI. On our podcast, you will hear host Josh DeTar discuss today's most pressing financial technology topics with seasoned industry experts from every possible discipline.
You know, your podcast hasn't officially made it until there's ads in it. But this is one you're not going to want to skip past. And, well, if you do, feel free to hit that fast forward 15 seconds button twice. Ever wonder what gives me my energy and enthusiasm during these podcasts? You know, outside of my relentless desire to learn about, connect, share, and build up community FIs and their mission to support the communities they serve? It's coffee, and lots of it. Now, you want to know what's better than your regular old coffee? How about donating $5 to the Children's Miracle Network hospitals through Credit Unions for Kids every time you purchase high-quality, ethically sourced coffee that also provides living wages to coffee farmers. So if you want to listen to this episode with epic levels of caffeine-induced focus and help kids in need, head to javaforkids.org to learn more and buy a bag or 10. Thanks.
Welcome to another episode of the Digital Banking Podcast. My guest today is Jenn Addabbo, the CEO and co-founder of Engage FI. Fearless. One word that sums up much of Jenn's personality and is exemplified by the way she runs her life and her business. Now, that's a pretty big word, and to be fair, pretty broad term. So let's expand on it a little. Does this mean she's going skydiving every weekend? No. In fact, she said she's never been. But how's this for fearless? With 2 young boys at home and an entrepreneurial husband, Jenn started her business the same day her husband did. Now, this wasn't always the plan for Jenn. While in college getting her marketing degree, her dad said, "You need to have a job by the time you graduate. Essentially, you're off the payroll." Now, her dad at the time worked at FIS, and it was the only company she really knew. So she applied for a marketing position there. And after years of working in a variety of roles as a vendor in the community FI space, Jenn's passion for helping and motivating, her passion for the FIs she was serving, and her passion for doing things different drove her to the fearless decision to start something from scratch. Her fearlessness also comes in alongside a determined competitive nature. Now, not so much a desire to compete with others, but a deep desire to be a better version of herself, as evidenced by her multi-sport athletics in high school and college, as well as in her own personal health and fitness commitments today. I also have to just say this. When I think of the word fearless, to me, nothing says fearless like the fierceness of a mom who says her kids' happiness and success is her utmost priority in life. Now, you couple mom power with a competitive entrepreneur who's willing to be bold and do tough things. That, friends, is a superpower. Jenn, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Josh. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. You know, so I got to say, though, when I say like mom power and superpower, I feel like this is the start to a comic book. So I almost feel like since we're saying, you know, the comic book terms, we also need to use like your origin story. Like we need the comic book that's your origin story. And I think it's actually
quite funny, to be honest with you.
Well, I think it's kind of funny too. I don't know if you realize this. I mean, you probably do because it's, you know, your office, but I forget what's behind me. But, as you were telling me about yourself and I was crafting this introduction to you, the sign behind you says she believed she could, so she did. And I think that is such an awesome testament to exactly that, your kind of origin story. So would you mind kind of starting there and just telling us a little bit about what brought you to the point we're at today?
Yeah, I love that sign. I've had it in my office for as long as I can remember, because I think it's important even for myself. I have to remind myself of kind of where we've come. Yeah, I mean, you referenced it in the intro. I went to college at James Madison University and originally thought I was going to be a news broadcaster. And this is the closest thing that I will get to in news broadcasting. I realized very quickly that was probably not it for me. But yeah, started in marketing at FIS, supporting their trade shows, and had somebody come by my cubicle one day and say, you should be in sales. And my response was, absolutely not. People hate people. I was like, I don't want to be somebody that somebody doesn't like. Nobody wants to get a call from a salesperson. Nobody wants to be seen as a salesperson. And I said no a bunch of times before I finally took a chance, and I was selling check warranty services to pawn shops and car dealerships. I would go on car dealer lots and pretend I was buying a car for the only reason to go get into the office of the CFO. And I'd say, I'm not really here to buy a car, but I could sell you some check warranty services.
That's amazing.
And it worked more often than not, so it helped pay the bills. But yeah, evolved quickly and realized I didn't want to be in a check dying industry. And I moved into digital banking within the FIS ecosystem and went from FIS over to PSCU, now Valera, and ended up running. That was my first real exposure to credit unions. So working on more of the bank side at FIS, and really fell in love with that community financial institution space during that time. And so went from there and ran all of the credit union relationships over at PSCU Valera before starting this company in 2014. So here we are 11 years later, and I feel like we've evolved even in the time since starting. So entrepreneurial spirit is still alive and well.
Well, I think so. There's a couple of things that I really want to spend some time talking to you about today. One, I always say this anytime I get, founders and CEOs on the podcast. I find it just personally like very fascinating to hear, why did you step out on the ledge? Like, why did you start this thing? Being an entrepreneur is not, for the faint of heart. But I want to come back to a couple of things that you said throughout there as well. So, maybe for starters, just talk to me a little bit about that, like taking that first leap of starting something new. Like, what was that like for you?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm jealous of kids now that are in college that get to participate in an entrepreneurial program, right? We have one here at the University of Tampa that's phenomenal. And I'm talking to a lot of friends and hearing their kids actually being interested in learning about entrepreneurship. It's not something that was prevalent, 25 years ago. So, or at least that I had any exposure to. So I wasn't intending to do this. I wasn't like a dream I had. I just felt like there was a time for disruption. And you referenced it earlier, I'm competitive within myself. I had a lot of support from my co-founder, James Guild. He and I stepped out together and started this thing. And we were honestly just tired of being, it was a lot of things, tired of being a vendor and sort of beholden to, you can only provide support based on what your company provided. And, I think we were on the other side of the table from some consulting firms that hadn't really changed over the years. And I felt like, let's go out and do it differently. Let's think about a way to disrupt the industry, and technology and data are going to make consultants even more powerful and provide insights. And so how can we get out there and do it? It was easier to have a co-founder. I don't know that I would have had the guts to do it on my own. So that support was really helpful. And then of course, the support of my husband and other clients that have been longtime clients that supported us from day one. They even said, I don't know what you're doing, but whatever you're going to do, we're here to support you. So that cool. Gives you a little bit of a soft cushion to land on.
Well, I have to imagine too, like it gives you a little bit of confidence in like, okay, then I'm doing the right thing, right? Like if people are saying, hey, I'm behind you on this.
Yeah, I think those first few times where you don't take a paycheck, terrifying. You're like, when? I kind of took for granted that benefits and the paycheck until it doesn't show up in your account. No, you just have to, when there's nowhere to go, you just go. You got to figure it out. And relationships have always been something that I hold dear. And I think you tap into those relationships to build a foundation. But that's why even when I talk to college, I was lucky enough to go back to JMU to speak to their entrepreneur program, specifically at tech. And just talking to those kids and giving them, sort of advice was really great for me. It was kind of a full circle moment of, at least you want to go out and take the crazy chance. I had no idea I was going to do that.
I have to say though, as excited as I am to talk to you about what you do, I kind of wish like you were telling me what your husband's business was when you started.
Right.
That sounds more fun. I gotta admit.
It was more fun. He opened an indoor bounce house for kids. Strictly was tired of driving the kids to these birthday parties that were all over town. He said, "There's got to be something we could do here." And he is more of a serial entrepreneur.
Oh, really?
So I watched him start a couple businesses, but the bounce house business was awesome too, with two small ones that could go with him to work. Was huge.
Genius.
Yeah. Yep.
I know. I tell you what, like I can't tell you how many times, as a newish parent with young kids, I've had that like, oh my gosh, like why don't I start a freaking bounce house business?
I know.
It is crazy what you spend to rent these things or go to these places. And so for my son's, I think it was for his third birthday last year, we just bought him a bounce house. It was like $300 on Amazon. I was like, I can't even rent one for that.
Well, last year it was perfect because it rained. I'm in Florida, and so it rains the entire summer, and they need somewhere to go, and so it's brilliant. It was an indoor facility that it was great. It was terrifying for both of us to be starting a business at the same time, but we did it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like I was telling you earlier, like I love being somebody else's number two. I mean, I have so much respect for you stepping out on that. And, you were even kind of referencing too, like at the time that you did that is in a really male heavy dominated industry. And I mean, you didn't just tackle one hill, you tackled like 3 or 4 at the same time. So
yeah. And it's, we still are predominantly female here. So I think that kind of bleeds through in a little bit of our values and culture. I think, it's funny that you mentioned the support that you provide. I am a big believer in this framework that we operate here called EOS, and it's the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And it's a book I read. And as a typical kind of CEO visionary, I see your kids in the background, so they're just saying hi, peeking in.
I know you saw Jack come up. He's like, hey.
Yeah, I can appreciate it. I should have waved to him. We operate off this framework, and what's so important for businesses, and I talk to a lot of credit union and bank CEOs about this, is that to grow a business and to have that entrepreneurial spirit doesn't mean you have to be a startup. It doesn't mean you have to go create your own entity. You can have that entrepreneurial spirit within a large organization and a legacy organization. You just start small. And it's interesting, the ability for somebody to take a visionary's ideas. And this is how I am now with my partner, Andres Basantes. Thank God for him. He's the integrator. So, we brainstorm a lot. I have wild ideas, and sometimes those let's put a pin in those for now. And it might be 6 months, or it might be never that those ideas come to fruition. But having somebody who can then truly execute on a vision and implement it out throughout the organization has been really impactful to us. And it's something that I shout from the rooftops to all of our clients, because it's just been so beneficial for our company as we've grown from 2 people to now 80 people.
So I want to come back and learn a little bit more about that system and how you talk about applying that at credit unions. Yeah. But, I want to go even further back, because you touched on this earlier too. And then again is the culture side of things though.
Yeah.
And especially as, this is regardless of whether you're Engage FI or whether you're ABC Credit Union or whether you're 123 FinTech, culture matters.
Right.
And a lot of times, the culture is really whatever the founding team brings to the table and what you create. And, one of the things our CEO, Siva, talks about all the time is, finding founders' passion and finding people to grow within your organization that have the same level of passion as the founders. 1, can be difficult. But 2, something that you were talking about that's a big part of kind of your almost personal culture, it seems like, is how do you, even as the founder, keep founders' passion as the company grows? So what does that look like in terms of the culture element for you?
I think it's something that honestly, early on, I took for granted. So sometimes when you're a small company and you're hiring people, you probably are going to lean toward, I'm going to hire somebody that I know or somebody that's just like me because it's easier to like relate to people that are just like you. But
Yeah.
it is one of the pieces of feedback that I gave some of the kids at the entrepreneur program at JMU. I said, it's hard, but you have to fill in your blind spots. And you read about this in here, but this is not something new, right? But you have to find people that you're like puzzle pieces that come together for the full picture. And that was something that took me a while to figure out. And the people side of what any business is the most difficult part about the business. We have created organically, it's almost like I don't want to talk about it because it's so precious. It's like this culture of being there for one another no matter what. And we're a pretty fully remote workforce. We have been for a long, long time. And the culture is so protected that we are very deliberate in who we hire and who stays on board. And it becomes very clear because we're so transparent in our values that you either are in or you're out. And that has taken a while to figure out. I think sometimes when companies are trying to grow, you're trying to fill a spot, you have an idea of a position, and you can be desperate in putting people in just to fill the void. And we've learned from that. It's too disruptive to do it that way versus being very deliberate about how you hire people, how you coach people, the teams that you put together that are cross-functional. It's a major part of who we are. And it's not just lip service. It's something that we talk to our teams about constantly. It's how our reviews are all situated. So we live and die by that, honestly.
I'm glad you brought that up. I think that's a similar lesson, like life lesson that I had to go through. Because I remember kind of my early days of being in a management position and in a hiring position. And yeah, even though I think you probably have heard from others and mentors and blah, 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 you need diversity within your team. You do. Sometimes you fall into that trap of, I kind of just actually want somebody that's going to think like me so I don't have to argue with them, or they're just going to say yes to whatever I say. And that seems like the easy decision. And it actually does work pretty well for a short period of time. But then to your point, like the blind spots get missed.
Right.
And I think that's where your innovation really starts to die. And I think that's where, when we talk about diversity, like that is the importance of it. Like you need people that are going to think and act differently to you and provide unique ideas and perspectives, and then create a culture that allows that to be kind of fiercely collaborative.
Yep.
And that's really where you're going to like breed innovation and movement. But it's like, even though it's hard to do.
Well, and I think something that you said is interesting is create the culture. I struggle with that because I don't think you can create the culture. I think the culture is a result of your vision, your actions, your tone, your collaboration, your transparency, like that. The culture is the result. I think sometimes people force themselves to create a culture that's innovative, and you can talk the talk all day long, but if you're not executing on it and you're not, and people aren't getting that feel from you when they interact with you, then it's not truly culture. It's fake.
So I love using the example of, and if you look back at my history far enough, I can say I was at one of those places, not in this industry actually, but where it was just, the culture was very created. Yeah. And the culture was like, we literally had like, I think at the time when I got hired, we had a page on the website that was like our culture. And it was an in-office culture. And it was like, we have ping pong tables in the break room and kombucha on tap and like all of this stuff. And what I quickly came to realize was that was just BS fluff and stuff culture. Yeah. It didn't actually tell me anything about the culture of the organization and how the people actually work together. And I agree, like that, it just kind of creates itself. And you shape it and mold it and you foster it from the foundation, but it becomes its own organic living thing.
Yeah. And I think for us, it's, being fully remote, obviously we're all adopting teams and have for a long, long time. And there's a lot of noise in teams, and there's a lot of, it's hard to keep up with everything with the 400 channels that you probably have. But our ability to share ideas, support one another in good times and bad times. We've had births of babies. We've had cancer diagnoses that have come through, but with tremendous results. We've had house burning down. We've had just general, hey, I need some support, and does anybody have any ideas about how I could get better at X, Y, or Z? That's been awesome to watch, really, from the sidelines, and watch the team interact with each other. And I think the more you observe that, the more it becomes innate in who you are and who you want to be to show up for your colleagues every day, which has proven out for us anyway.
I'm curious to get your take on this. I've developed a couple of hot takes for me personally over the last handful of years. And the first is that there's no such thing as personal and professional life anymore. There's just life.
Yep.
You know what? And I used to be super weird about like trying to have this like, iron curtain up between the two. And just like you're saying, you're like, Jack just came and, popped his head up on the window. And it's like, hey, you know what? Here's the deal. I work from home.
Right.
It is what it is. And you know what? I could be on a demo for Navy Fed. And if my, she loves to, if my 1.5-year-old daughter, Annie, comes and bursts through my office doors, and she is I sidetrack. I totally thought, Jen, when I got a daughter, I was like, oh, I'm going to get the like cuddly, like always wants affection, gives it.
Yeah.
No. Like getting a hug out of Annie is like, so if she comes and bursts. She's going to be fearless. She is. But if she bursts through my office and she wants a hug, I'm like, hey, this may be the one and only hug I get all day. I was like, I don't care who's on the other line. I'm taking that hug.
I think what's cool about it, though, is they get to see you work. Like that was something that was foreign, at least when I was growing up. I knew my dad was in technology. Periodically, I'd get to go to the data centers and tour the data centers and see the big computers. And certainly dating myself, but that was all I saw, right? So the idea of work, I love the fact that my kids see and hear me having conversations when I work from home. They can overhear the conversation. It's really I think it's cool. I think it gives them a better idea as to kind of what you do. Obviously, it can be distracting sometimes when you're trying to get work done, but yeah, it's work-life integration. And, you and I were talking earlier about the gym and being such a non-negotiable of what's important is prioritizing certain things, right? And I reference the fact that I respect the calendar. When somebody puts time on my calendar for a meeting, I don't move it as often as I can, not. Why do I tend to delete? Oh, gym time. Oh, I'm just going to delete that. So I was finding I don't have time to go to the gym. I can't, by the time I get home, it's too late, or I'm certainly not unfortunately, unlike a lot of entrepreneurs, I'm not a 5 a.m.er. And so I have to figure out where it fits in. And now I've really, over the past couple of years, have focused on making that a priority, just like I would anybody who sets a meeting with me, right? I'm setting a meeting with myself. So
setting a meeting with yourself. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think too, it's same. It's cool to have the opportunity to have your kids see that in action. I mean, we have a home gym, and same thing. Like my wife is the same way. She's like, hey, I'm going to try and work out like maybe when Annie's napping or before the kids wake up or something like that. But she's like, but if they're up, like, hey, this is mom's time. Like mom is going to work out. We're going to get that in. And then they see that discipline in her. They see that like, her taking time for herself mentally and physically is important.
Definitely.
So what I'm curious on is, that's kind of one of my hot takes that I've taken on recently. I think conversely, it's your family becoming a part of work and seeing work and all of that. But I think too, it's the interesting side of work becoming family. And I saw this LinkedIn post a while ago, Jen. I have it saved. And it's one of those, like, I really want to respond to it, but I really want to put some time and thought into the response. And I've been kind of crafting my response around this. And essentially it was, when a company says, our culture is like family, run. It's BS. Like that's them creating fake culture to say, oh, we're like family around here. And, you don't want to create a culture of family. You want to create a culture of winners. And, you have to be super competitive and all of this stuff. And I started thinking about it. I was like, but those are the same things I want for my family. Right. I want my family to be loyal, but not just because they're blood. I want them to be loyal because I earn it, and that I've worked to get their trust and their respect, and that I demonstrate those things and I hold them accountable, right?
Right.
Like, and I'm going to do the same thing with my employees, and I would hope that my employer would do the same thing for me. But at the same time, like, you do create this genuine family-like bond. I mean, I have people that, work in our India office that, Jen, I've never met, but I would take a bullet for. I mean, they're family to me. Like, I genuinely believe that in my soul, that they are family to me because we've built that kind of relationship over a decade.
Right.
And so to say, like, oh, if a company says, they have a family culture, like, run, I'm like, see, I disagree.
Yeah, I think that you can feel it's interesting as we think about like how technology is going to evolve, especially in a company like ours where we're so service oriented, right? We're not selling a widget or a product. We're our people are our biggest asset, right? That's what banks and credit unions are relying on, is our expertise and our guidance and our ability to help them. And so I think you can kind of sniff out culture that is fake versus, wow, when this person shows up on a call or you see them at a conference or they're in a meeting, it's consistent whether you see somebody who's been with the company 2 years or somebody who's founded the company, right? There's a continuity in that, and that's culture. That's not, I have our values on my mouse pad, right? But it's more than just the words. It's really that you're living by that. And it will be evident as sort of the evolution of technology and how services companies leverage technology, that balance of where we might be going with AI, that importance of the people aspect is going to become even more evident. I think that's really, we're going to separate the cream from the crop.
Okay, that's kind of a hard pivot, but now you piqued my interest. So how do you think, as technology evolves, how do you think that's going to have an impact on companies' cultures? And how do you think that's going to have an impact on, like, the importance of the culture as kind of a differentiator?
I really think it's funny. Our CTO literally this morning posted, we're having an interesting back and forth on the leadership team. And he said, that the Chick-fil-A model, right? The service oriented, there's plenty of fast food places that you can choose from. Chick-fil-A has a balance of technology and efficiency, right? And they were probably one of the first, and I would argue one of the best at the curbside pickup process, the order ahead, and they balance that with their service with a smile, their my pleasure response, their willingness to go above and beyond. I witnessed it, my kids, I feel like have Chick-fil-A every day in the summer, but I witnessed it the other day after a lacrosse tournament. Somebody was upset. Immediately, the manager came over, had some free gift cards for sandwiches. I'm so sorry, this took a little bit longer than you expected. There was no back and forth, right? There was just, hey, we see that you're concerned. I'm going to be proactive in responding to you. And so obviously much broader, a lot more important business that we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. But I think balancing that use of technology to make you better, more efficient, give you access to more information. If you skew too far from your values on the service side and you rely too much on technology, it's going to be clear. So there's a balance, and we're working on what does that look like for us in the next 5 years as AI becomes more prevalent in the day-to-day use and our clients are utilizing AI. How do we make sure that you can never really automate expertise, right? The bumps and bruises that we've all learned, whether personally or professionally, are embedded in our DNA. And so we don't want to make those same mistakes again. And that's a key component of how we look at it. It's making sure that our team has the tools they need to thrive, but that they can focus on the service aspect of how they help their clients.
I'd love to get your thoughts on, we give you two questions in one, in what that looks like for your own company, and then what you think that looks like for, the credit unions and the community banks that we serve. But before you do, it's funny, you made this comment, and I wanted to wait till now to make the statement, but I peel back the Wizard of Oz curtain a little bit, how I work with our guests as before we hit record, I talk to them, I get to know them, especially if I don't know them at all, a little bit. And then I work to craft an introduction to that guest. And I actually take, a lot of like self-pride in making sure to get that right to highlight our guest, because you are the most important person on this show, not me. And I really want to set people up to be excited to come and listen to the things that you have to say. And you made the joke like, hey, ChatGPT could have just like transcribed this and spit it out. And I was like, absolutely. But that's one of those areas where I feel like, would it make me slightly more efficient? Yes. Could it possibly have written exactly what I wrote? Yes. But there was almost I wanted to show you personally that I cared. And that I took the time to listen, and that I took the time to think about wanting to represent you appropriately. And I'd like to think, that that's kind of how you're describing thinking about how you run your business and how financial institutions should be thinking about it is like, there's a lot that you can do to optimize efficiency, that you can optimize intelligence and insights through by using things like AI. But where are the times and the places where you need to demonstrate that like you're showing up as a person? And so, yeah. So what does that look like for your own company? And then what are some of your recommendations for our CFIs?
First, I will say I appreciate the effort that you put into it, because there's a component of, hey, I respect you enough to take the time to put this into my own words. And it really comes across as being more personal. So tongue-in-cheek joke on that. But also, I do fear a little bit, because that's a creative outlet for you, right? You get to sort of hear in the 15 or 20 minutes that we were talking of, how you're going to frame that up. That allows you to then be creative. I do worry that we get to a point, gosh, much like what we've seen with Waze and GPS, right? If I had to get in a car and drive somewhere and not use Waze and try to use my own,
I'd be toast.
Yeah. And I feel like on the one hand, that really concerns me, because I feel this need to be able to prove to myself I could do it. But on the other hand, it's so easy. So I remember the days that you had to print out the MapQuest, turn by turn and try to drive and read, and it was pitch black. So I think there's obviously some concerns around it, but we have started to really see efficiencies. And for us, that's time is so precious for us. We're working with so many clients on so many projects, and it's important for us that we manage our team's time appropriately. And so where we're looking at it is, how can we help them be more efficient? So simple things like, everybody is implementing now sort of the Fireflies AI, right? For note taking and meeting summaries, so that a consultant and a program manager don't have to spend their time retyping notes from a meeting. It's just, editing and making sure that the client has the updates they need. We're using Scribe AI to test out training for various applications. So when we hire someone, it's kind of a joke here. We usually bring somebody on and we've got 5 projects already teed up for them, so that the learning curve has to be really short. And so we're implementing ideas around training for that. And then just, some best practices around data and insights. We are, as a consulting company, have a massive amount of data and just input and knowledge that our clients can leverage and that we can leverage to help our clients make smarter decisions. So it's definitely a balance. It's a tool for efficiency internally, layered with subject matter expertise. And that's the very same message we're telling our clients. So we are expanding into AI consulting later this year, and helping our clients really hone in on a strategy. I'd say the early adopters and use cases that we've seen, because I think people think that it's bigger than it needs to be. And you've heard everything from AI as artificial intelligence to automation intelligence, automation improvement, right? You can kind of make AI be defined however you want. We're seeing it mostly within the LMS, learning systems, training, and call center, which is perfect, right? So if you can especially if you've got turnover in that space, or you're going through a conversion and you need to bring on new employees to support that conversion, getting them up to speed as quickly as possible is a great way to implement AI as a strategy. But again, still focused on internal, and then layering in that service angle that the member service representative or the CSR is going to still deliver messages out to the customers and members.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to give you maybe a scenario and get your thoughts on, for like a community financial institution. Yeah. It's being able to take, decades and decades of knowledge and information about how you serve your customers, what products you offer, how you would answer this question. But like you were saying, there's kind of that, it has to be coupled with the culture of the organization and the Chick-fil-A example, right? And it's like that Chick-fil-A manager was able to just see that there was a problem, and they were given the authority because the company has put the right, culture and structure in place and has the technology to be able to understand and manage how much is this manager giving out and how often and why and all of these things. But it made the process just so simple. I mean, if you think about it from a credit union's perspective, yeah, you've got a new, person on the teller line, and they can much quicker get spun up on and have, for all intents and purposes, as much data information as a teller that's been on the teller line for 20 years right next to them. But then they're able to bring, the cultural and empathetic side of things where, a member walks in and you can see they've got, swollen, puffy eyes, and you can ask, like, what's going on? You're like, oh, well, I was up all night because I had a sick kid and we just got hit with a bunch of medical bills that we weren't expecting. And that can prompt a whole different conversation that I would argue, your AI is never going to replace.
Right. Yeah, I don't disagree. I think it's figuring out how to balance it. You can't ignore it, right? You can't say, oh, we're going to be overregulated with it or it's never going to push through. I think like any innovation, I would highlight, and this is a lot of what we're doing even with some of our strategic planning, is you can still encapsulate this idea of entrepreneurship or small business strategies, or, we always used to say like, okay, if we started over tomorrow, how would we build this? And I feel like banks and credit unions should be thinking more that way. Instead, often they think, yeah, we've been doing it this way for 30 years. Could it be better? Yes, but we don't have the budget. We don't have the resources. The technology we're on isn't appropriate. Instead, they should be thinking, if we were going to do this, if we're going to build a new bank or credit union tomorrow, how would we do it? And start to carve out, some key areas that maybe could be implemented within this, long-standing legacy that they have. Because there's something to be said for that, right? The community bank or credit union that's been around for 50 years is entrenched within their communities, and it's a really important part of the community FI space. But I do think we could do a better job as an industry of innovating within legacy.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of thinking of it. Like if I were to start my own company again today, what would I do the same or what would I do different? And yeah, I mean, you're right. Like AI is here. So if you were to start something brand new, including a credit union or a bank, a part of that strategy would be, how would we leverage these tools? I saw a post this morning, actually, that was saying that they believe that the person who will start the first billion-dollar company with one employee is living today. And it's because it'll be powered by AI.
Right.
And there will be one single employee of this company that's $1 billion company.
We'll just have to see how their service model is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm like, but who knows what that looks like? And I'm like, I don't, so the tool is there. So how would you think about building a credit union or a bank that would be super, super efficient using those tools? And then the question becomes, where would you double down on the human power? And I think that's what you were referencing, right?
Yeah, and how do you not get distracted by it, right? That's the challenge with any innovation, is it can be easily distracting, and you can kind of go down a rabbit hole of what you think you have this brilliant idea and it's going to work, but if you're not careful, you can be completely distracted and avoid your core business. So it's a balance of, trying and failing quickly, right? The whole kind of, even the agile rollout of technology. It's like, okay, are we on the right track? Oh, we're not on the right track this sprint. Let's revisit and let's pivot for the next sprint to make sure that we're on track, versus the legacy technology deployment of waterfall technology plans where you didn't know you were wrong until you were wrong. And then you have to scrap it all back. Yeah. So I think that, it's a back to culture. It's a culture thing. And it comes from the top of the financial institutions themselves. If the CEO, and we've seen it clear as day, if the CEO and the leadership team has a passion for innovation and improvement and the customer and member experience, the whole technology stack, the strategy, the execution is very different than someone who has no desire to change and really is kind of more of that old school thought process.
Well, okay, so that's an interesting point because that kind of comes back to what you were talking about earlier that I wanted to come back to anyway, which was like as a founder yourself, right? We were talking about just getting founders' passion within the other employees of your organization, but even just within yourself, right? You said you've been doing this for 11 years now. How do you keep the passion alive? And so when you start thinking about the introduction of technology, like how does that even change your ability to continue to reinvent yourself over and over again and still have passion while remaining kind of true to your core beliefs? So to your point, like you think about a credit union that's like, okay, well, we're just going to, we're going to do 90% of everything with technology and with AI and all of this. What happens to that founder's passion if it's just all done by machines?
Yeah, and we kind of talked about this too prior to the hitting the record button, right? I think there's consulting firms, and you and I talked about this. I really don't love the word consulting. I think I like the word advocate. I think consulting is seen as, I said it earlier, like, oh, I'm not quite ready to retire, so I'll just go into consulting and I'll pick up some gigs. And so there's folks that are out there that are creating lifestyle businesses in consulting. And what we're trying to do is really massively impact our clients. I mean, our success is directly driven by our client success. That's it. There's no other way to look at it. And so when I think about, what that still invigorates me, that every time we have a client that we have helped through some challenges and have talked through all of the scenarios of how this could affect their financial institution and their members or customers, that gets me excited. But what also is apparent to me is that our industry is going to continue to change. And that keeps that entrepreneurial spirit running in me too, right? AI wasn't even something we talked about 2 years ago. Honestly, it was. Now, there's other areas. We launched into some new service lines in the past couple of years that have really taken off that weren't part of our core consulting services when we first started, right? We were payments and digital and core, and now we're expanding into the integrated communications channel lines and now artificial intelligence and CRM systems. And, as our clients' needs change because the industry has changed around them, we now have another opportunity to bring on the right subject matter experts to help them. So I would say that keeps that fire going. And then, we have one of our values is continuous improvement. And we talk almost every day about 1% better every day. How do we provide more value to our clients? How do we get better at, managing the work-life load internally? I was watching, I'm sure we get a lot of our input from LinkedIn. I was watching something the other day about a speaker whose husband was a professional coach, like a NBA coach or NFL coach, can't remember. And she said that what separates folks are the things that take no talent, and it's effort, right? The guy that runs off the field when his coach calls him out. I tell my kids this all the time. As soon as your coach calls you to sub out, don't drop your shoulders like, oh, I'm subbed out. You run off the field as fast as you possibly can, and you show that coach that you're responsive and you're listening, showing up early to put in the extra time, doing the deep dive to really make sure you understand whatever that meeting is going to be or whatever that event is going to be, that you're doing the homework. It doesn't take talent. It just takes effort. And so that's a big piece of what we're trying to do is just 1% better every day. And that continuous improvement loop for the benefit of our clients. That drives me. That's like, oh my gosh, we said we were going to do this. We can do it better next time. Oh, we did it. We can do it better next time. Right. And just always having that methodology, I think is critical.
What do you think that looks like for the credit unions and community banks? Like, how do they keep the passion for what started the credit union 50 years ago when, leadership changes, when technology comes into play, and some of this stuff starts to get automated and done by AI? How do you keep that founder's passion alive for your credit union?
The ones that I've seen really do it well always come back to the person on the other side of the screen, the phone, the teller line, right? So your example of, we're here to help that parent who is in a situation where they were not expecting medical bills, or someone lost their job and now they're in a unfortunate situation of having to provide for their family. And it's remembering the person that you're trying to serve, that individual person, and the impact that you can have. I think sometimes that can be forgotten. And the ones that the clients of ours that I've worked with, even folks that I've worked with my entire career, when they continue to remind themselves about that, that's really that really is where they thrive, is in the why behind it. Technology is going to be there, and technology is going to be, there's a lot of great benefits to technology, but at the end of the day, you're deploying that technology for the benefit of the end consumer that's the recipient, whether it's a positive or a negative, right? College, I need funding for college, or, I'm buying my first house. All of those things still happen, and they're going to continue to happen, and they need to go to a trusted source for that. And that's where community institutions can really thrive.
So coming back to the entrepreneurial system that you guys use, you were saying that you also really recommend that even within the credit union and community bank space to kind of think like an entrepreneur to do what we were just talking about. So can you talk to me a little bit about just some of the theories behind the system, how it works, how you implement it, and what some of your recommendations are?
Yeah, I would say, growing a business, you kind of go through tranches of growth, right? You start and you maybe have one small idea, and it's okay. You don't really need any formalization because it's a small idea. And then as that idea gets bigger and your teams get bigger and you have more customers to support, you have to formalize some of the framework that the business runs off of. And so I'm involved in several CEO networking groups, YPO, Vistage, et cetera. And I was listening to what I love about that is the exposure to other CEOs that are outside of financial services. They're a wide array, every industry you could possibly imagine. And I kept hearing this EOS framework come up. And so I read the book, Get a Grip, which is a fable about a small business who was going through challenges and growth, and they implemented this strategy and this framework and tools and how it catapulted their success. And success can mean anything. Success can just be, I've got the right people in the right seat. I've got the right metrics in order to measure what success looks like. Or I want to see tremendous growth of my organization. And so I've recommended it. We're seeing a lot of new CEOs, whether they're coming in through merger and acquisition. We're seeing a wave of retirees in the community financial institution space at the C-level. And so I've recommended it to a lot of incoming CEOs or new CEOs to be thinking about, how do they now come into this organization? Again, it might be an organization that's been around for 50 years, and now you're coming in as a fresh face and you want to reinvigorate without distracting. And so EOS really helps with that. It allows the businesses to create near-term goals. So you have big rocks that each leader has for their quarter. You have very specific metrics that you report on every Friday in your level 10 meetings. You have a 1 year, a 3 year, a 5 year, and a 10-year vision that you review on an annual basis. And so it gives you that accountability and structure that you need, while at the same time giving you full visibility into what the organization is doing. It's been tremendous for us. It really, funny enough, when we started, I was concerned that we weren't going to have enough time because of our calendars and meetings. And what it actually ended up doing was reducing the number of one-on-one meetings with my direct report, and created a much more collaborative culture. And when we've had something come up that's like a big project that requires a lot of folks and a pretty intense roadmap, we've been able to be more efficient because we get together on these level 10 meetings as a leadership team, and we slice and dice. I've just seen the time reduced significantly to make decisions on projects. So yeah, I probably sent that book to 30 CEOs in the past year.
Really?
It's just something, and I'm not endorsing, I'm not paid by them.
I was going to say, what's the kick? No, I'm just kidding.
I know. That's critical. We do not take money from outside vendors.
No, you gotta get, what do they call it when you're like an Instagram influencer, where you get
I'm an influencer. Yeah.
You get a coupon, like, buy this book through my coupon code.
Yeah.
You get 10% off, and I get it.
Right. No, I'm a big believer in, and I've been this way from day one, is when you pick up the phone and you talk to somebody, hopefully they take something away from that conversation. Otherwise, you're not adding any value. So I feel like, in addition to what we're doing in helping our clients in their day-to-day work that they hire us for, I'm just a big believer on any time I can provide insight that somebody didn't know anything about, or, hey, I heard somebody over here having that exact same problem. Let me connect you guys so that you can work through it together. That's core to who we are. So that's how I kind of feel about that book. It helped us, so maybe it can help others.
Okay, I want to throw a curveball at you. You use two words, like almost within the same sentence, that I've been thinking a lot about lately. And it's value and success. And just to put you in my shoes and why I've been thinking about this a lot, right, is you think about, let's just call a spade, like, what my day job is, right? And, having conversations with community financial institutions about digital banking is a really big project. This is not a widget. Somebody's not buying this off the internet. This is not a, B2C sale where somebody's just going to order 100 of our trinkets and we're going to ship them out kind of thing. These are like long-term commitment, relationship-based products that have, widespread impact across your organization and, more importantly, your account holders. So people don't make these decisions lightly. And so as I go into a lot of these conversations, that has been a lot of like what I've been mulling about in my head is, okay, how do we, one, add and extract value in this scenario? But two, how do we define success? And that's why I say I want to kind of throw you a curveball. That's kind of your job.
Right.
Right? So like, I don't know. I'm just curious. How do you think about when you're, working with one of your customers and you're saying, hey, like we have to find a way, like if you're going to hire us as the quote unquote experts, like how do we bring value to this conversation? And then how do you determine and define success? Like what does success look like?
It's different for every single client. And so that's the thing about consulting that it makes it interesting is every interaction. I was on a call with a client right before this, and the complexity of the decisions and making one decision on a payment solution affects the digital integration capabilities. And if they're not thinking about that at the broadest level, they might make a siloed decision that affects the organization and their account holders tremendously, and they won't realize it till it's too late. So we spend a ton of time in early discovery with our clients to identify what success looks like. Success based on the market conditions could be, I need to save as much money as possible. I'm paying too much. I need to find me money, right? And the definition of success is cost savings. So when we get into projects like that, those are the glasses that's the filter that we're looking through versus efficiency, scalability, geographical reach, right? I want to get access to more people within my community. I want to focus on financial literacy and education. I want to give back to my community in a philanthropic way. Like all of these things are, okay, as you're thinking through the projects, at the end of the day, what is success defined? And that comes from the client. We just help facilitate the discussion. But then we carry that through to the end. And that's oftentimes where decisions are made. You said success, bank or credit union, you said success was this at the beginning. As you're making your final decision, using that lens, which decision are you going to make? And too often there's distractions along the way. I think when folks don't have someone helping facilitate that conversation, but it is very different depending on the size of the organization, the projects they're working on, the leadership, the ability to make decisions, tough decisions, because that's what you run into, right? I remember my digital banking days, having somebody go through a digital banking change or a core change or a payments provider change is a big decision because it affects the member or the customer at the end of the day. And sometimes people are afraid to make those decisions. And it's our job to give them the insight, the data, the expertise to have the peace of mind to make the right decision, even if it's a scary one.
That's a good point. As think about just being on this side of the table, right? We go through a lot of these different evaluations with institutions. And you're right, like the definition of success is totally different. And it's different across all of these. So if I just assume that everybody's definition of success is the same, then by de facto, I'm going to be wrong a lot more than I'm going to be right. But two, I think the challenge comes in if the institution doesn't have their own concrete definition of success that they agree on. Because I think a lot of times too, what we see is that folks get to the end, and I like the way you said it. I'm going to have to paraphrase because I don't remember exactly, but it was like the decision should get made at the very end. You got to remember, what did we start with as saying the definition of success is? And now that may change throughout a project, right? But if you don't have it kind of clearly defined and documented, like I think that should be written out somewhere, that at the end of this, what is our goal? Our goal is to save 10% over our current provider. Great. Then that's how you should approach that, right? You should go in and just say, hey, look, we are looking to save money. So who's going to be able to provide at least apples to apples at 10% less, because that is our goal. That is our definition of success, right? But, I like to use, go ahead.
I equate that to, in our process, to the scenario of like CarMax or any car buying. I guess Carvana now you could do, but the analogy that I used with my team is, as a mom with 2 kids, sports, bags, lacrosse sticks, I might want to drive a 2-door convertible. The reality of that is, when I go to buy a car, I might get completely distracted by this amazing 2-door convertible that does not fit the needs of my family. So we need to just, in those filters, remove the distraction of the 2-door convertible and focus in on the needs that I've identified, which is I need 4 doors, I need trunk space, those are the filters I'm making decisions on, because it can be distracting. It can be, down the road, the wrong decision gets made because you were distracted by the shiny 2-door convertible instead of what you really needed. And so if you don't know what those requirements are early on, you're gonna make the wrong decision. So that's kind of how we look at it.
That's funny. That kind of comes back to what I can't remember if we actually said this on the recording or not, but you were telling me back to kind of your origin story about, like, that was one of the things that you struggled with personally, was being, in my shoes and being on the vendor side. You were like, look, like, I sell red 2-door convertibles.
Right.
And so Jenn doesn't really need one, but that's all I have to offer her. So when she comes into my dealership, I'm like, hey, look, can you imagine what it would be like just you and your husband, a Sunday drive through wine country, your hair's blowing in the wind, and you're like, oh, yes. And you come home with this, and your husband's like, how are you going to get the kids to soccer practice in this thing? Like,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And so now this gives you a different ability to be able to say, okay, no. So tell me first, what's your definition of success? Right. Well, I've got 2 boys with a ton of sports gear, and I got to get them to practice. And okay, cool. Now that I know your definition of success, let's get rid of that. I know that sports car looks cool. Let's get rid of that. Right. Let's talk about, we got some cool SUVs, some minivans. Like, let's go that route.
Right. It's need and solution fit. And I think for what was eye-opening for me, I've said this, and no offense as a solution provider out in the market, but no vendor is perfect. And I thought, for sure, having been on the vendor side, when I was on the other side of the table helping clients, I'm like, I'm going to find that silver bullet vendor who's doing everything right. Nobody's perfect. Nobody's doing everything right. So it's a matter of going into these decisions eyes wide open to say, okay, these are the risks that you incur by making decisions with certain vendors, or these are the pros and cons of each vendor and what they're going to provide you. And based on your requirements and your definition of success, you need to be comfortable with, where we end up at the end of the project. So it, for me, was gratifying to get on the other side of the table and say, I'm not beholden to a certain, vendor to force my product or my service at that client. And now we have the luxury and there's so much change happening in our industry that our job is to stay ahead of it. It's to make sure that we're continuing to research and read and get our hands in everything we possibly can, so that we provide that outside in perspective for the folks that don't know what they don't know, right? Those community financial institutions just don't know what they don't know. And it's our job to know it. That's why they bring us in.
I love your car buying example. One, because I'm a simpleton and I like simple examples. Everybody's heard me say that many times on the show. But 2, I'm a car nerd. So it works perfect for me. But as you were talking about it, I think that's another great example of just, you have to understand what your definitions of success are and kind of what's the priority of them. Because to your point, like, let's say you're going in to buy a car and you need to transport the 2 boys and all of their, sports gear around and all of that. But if one of your definitions of success is that it's red, right? Then you got to figure out like how high on the priority list really is that? Because if you find the perfect car, but it's not red, but the two-door convertible is red, like if that was your number one definition of success is that it be red, then you end up with the wrong car. And then I think
you have to weight the priority, right? You have to say, okay, is fraud more important than experience? Is price more important than fraud? And so, those are the discussions we're having every day. And I think, unfortunately, when financial institutions don't have that guidance, you just get into analysis paralysis because it is too hard to make a decision, and you're trying to make everybody happy on your team, and you're thinking about you're going to make every member or customer happy, and you're not going to make every member on your team happy whenever you make some of these buying decisions. So you're right. It's weighting the priorities.
Well, and I like what you said too about, you don't know what you don't know either. And that's not meant in any disrespect, right? I mean, same thing. Like I don't know what I don't know about whatever, right? And kind of back to your car buying example, like if my definition of success is to get a car that transports the kids in their sports gear, but I don't know that since the last time I looked at cars, one of the things that's an option in the market with certain manufacturers is a built-in vacuum. Right? Then that's not even on my definitions of success list for my car. But if I go through and I say, hey, look, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to maintain an efficient life. And these are the things that are important to me transporting my kids. I'm a little bit of a neat freak. Like I still like to be clean. So like maybe a car that's got easy surfaces to wipe down. If somebody is helping to like advocate for me in that scenario, then they're going to tell me things like, well, hey, if that's important to you, did you know that you can get vacuums now in the car?
Right.
Now that may be added to my definitions of success list when it would not have been previously.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a great place to be in. The ability to have broad perspective across our industry in every vendor that our clients work with. It's a really cool spot to be.
I imagine it's going to be like, how do you sleep at night too? Like, how do you turn your brain off?
Yeah, I have good people on my team. That's how it is. I know that my team's got a full handle on what they're doing. And we have folks that are deep subject matter experts in their service lines, and that's helpful. But back to some of the framework that we've implemented and the data sharing and knowledge sharing through technology, we have more visibility than we ever have into all the key areas of the business. And so it's at my fingertips, so to speak.
Yeah, I think, and that's a good like use case example for our FIs and ourselves too, right? Is like, that's a great way that technology can just kind of help up level information dissemination. Because even then, like just using our example of being able to spin up a teller on all of the knowledge that maybe a 20-year teller would have quicker. But at the same time, like I had a guest on the show not too long ago who's the CEO of a good-sized credit union. And we kind of went down this rabbit hole where he was like, man, wish that I could hear every conversation that our tellers are having with our members. And he's like, not because I don't trust what they're saying or anything. He's like, it's just that's where the fascinating conversations are. And that's where I could be more informed about the decisions that I could make for our credit union that would have the biggest value add and, impacts to our members. And it's like, That's a place, I don't know if we want to get this creepy, but you got microphones on every single teller line that pick up every interaction and record it as separate audio tracks. And an AI analyzes it and gives you a top 5 trends this week email to the CEO. Yeah, I don't know. That's pretty rad.
That's where they're going with contact centers, right? I mean, the disposition of the calls, the ability to hear fraudulent, key components that are going to be indicative of a fraudulent call. That's happening. I mean, that is the probably earliest term use case on the AI side is within those conversations that are already being recorded within the contact center. So it's gonna be a wild ride here for the next, probably 5 years as to how people start implementing this and acting on it.
Yeah, but like you were saying too, I mean, there's just then there will be the next thing, right?
I know.
Like there's always that's the point of innovation is This is the big innovation right now, but there's going to be another one next. And I don't know. This is really cool to be able to talk to folks like yourself in our industry who, this is an industry that cares so much about the people side of things. Mm-hmm. So we're thinking about building businesses and supporting the businesses that are leveraging technology to be efficient, to be able to stay relevant, to be able to do the things that they need to do, but kind of always falling back on the culture and the heart and the service side of things. And then, to your point of just, having somebody to help kind of be a navigator through all of that is probably pretty cool. I imagine that's a lot of fun.
It's great. The trusted advocate, trusted advisor side of what we do is unmatched.
I love that. Well, Jen, this has been an absolute awesome way to spend my Friday. But before I let you go, I had 2 final questions for you. So,
Okay.
Given what you do, how do you stay up to date? You said you got a great team, but how do you stay up to date on what's happening in the industry?
I am reading as much as I possibly can, listening to podcasts like this. We have access to a ton of information. So through the industry channels and the vendors that we interact with, we have actually on our team's channels, one of them is industry news and updates. And that's literally getting updated from every employee on our team. So frequently there will be updates on, did you hear that this is going on? So I learned a lot from my team internally, just on the information they have access to. LinkedIn, I'm on 24 hours a day, listening and reading. You have to be intellectually curious. That's also another kind of key component of who we bring on board is just because you've been in an industry for 20 plus years, you have to still want to learn more about this industry. You can't just rely on, data points that you had in your career 10 years ago, and because it's changing so quickly. So yeah, I listen to a lot of founders podcasts too, to keep me invigorated on the entrepreneurial front.
I should check that out.
Yeah.
Because I find that so curious. Like I said, I don't know if I'm ever going to be the one to do it, but I find it really fascinating.
I was listening to there's literally a podcast called Founders, and talk about use of AI. The guy was saying that he reads like 50 biographies or autobiographies a year. And then he was sharing in the podcast his feedback on the autobiographies. And then what he did is he had AI take all of the compilation so that if you, as an entrepreneur, as a founder, were struggling with scale or hiring or technology investment, you can actually query his site and it will bring you examples from the 50 biographies or autobiographies of that item. So and then I come back to my team and say, this is a great idea we could deploy internally on all of the vendor data that we have. So I try to listen to those things and then relate it back to our business and our industry as best I can.
That's cool. Well, then I guess this kind of leads to the next question, which is if people want to just short circuit all of that, they don't want to maybe do all of it, how can they connect with you, or how can they learn more about Engage FI or connect with you in the organization?
I would say probably every industry event you will see someone from our team. We are highly entrenched in all the trade shows and conferences, but easiest is LinkedIn. Follow us on LinkedIn at Engage FI or connect with me personally. Happy to have conversations about this all day, every day. Very passionate about what we're doing. Yeah, and our website, engagefi.com. We just did a relaunch and the team did a fantastic job. So
nice.
Excited. Yeah.
Well, again, it's really cool to be able to talk to people like you and hear your origin story of like, how did you start this thing? But I think why those stories are so interesting and why I love talking to folks like you is it's actually more interesting to hear how you keep it alive and how do you keep evolving and innovating it. So thank you for taking time out of your busy Friday to come and be a guest on the Digital Banking Podcast.
I am happy to. I'm passionate about this. I think your outreach is great and excited to see where the industry is going to go. I know you and I are both along for the ride on this one.
Yeah, that's true. I'm not going anywhere. This is too much fun.
Thanks, Josh. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jen.
Thank you for listening to the Digital Banking Podcast, powered by Typhone. Find more episodes on digitalbankingpodcast.com or subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.